Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this month's newsletter. Listen, I have someone special with me. I have Sara, and she's going to introduce herself. But this month we're focusing on modern day slavery. Sara, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about Zoe.
Zoe Network is a part of the PAOC global family. It really was birthed out of a desire to see, first of all, a woman empowered, equipped, and released to be on mission with God. And then of course we had to catch the net up. And so there's courses in there for men and women. And our other arm is actually the part I'm involved in, which is partnering with local churches and other global workers around the world for projects usually surrounding gender inequality. So where women are experiencing vulnerabilities, so it could be lack of education, lack of access to medical care, leadership development, modern day slavery is one of them, and poverty alleviation. And so all those issues come into play when you look at helping support vulnerable women. And as a part of our POC Mission Global strategy is reaching the most vulnerable in the world socioeconomically and more. And most of those stats make up women and girls.
You talked about modern day slavery. That might look really different. Sara, can you let us know what does modern day slavery actually kind of look like and what you're used to or what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they think about modern day slavery, they think about like the movies that look at rescuing people from usually sexual exploitation. And that is a part of modern day slavery, but also a huge part of it is actually forced labor. So it could look like girls from the Philippines being told that there's a good job for them in United Emirates, and they get there and their paperwork is seized and they're held captive, and they just work their butts off for this family for no reward. So when you're looking at modern day slavery, a lot of it then is just like their choices are taken away, their ability to leave is taken away, and they're exploited either for their labor or their sexual use. Yeah.
So is there an example that you can kind of give for us to, just get a glimpse into what you're doing?
Well, we do partner with this one local pastor in Thailand. Originally because he started a domestic violence shelter because he was seeing that most of the women in his area were experiencing violence in marriage because the men, there was a lot of poverty and drug use and alcohol abuse. And so what happens, he explained to us in that community, is that when girls get a certain age, they get presented a choice. You either marry this old man or you get kicked out of the community. And so they're either going into these situations with these men who are going to abuse them, or they leave and they're vulnerable, and they ended up oftentimes maybe working in Bangkok in the sex trade district. And so this pastor, his dream is to buy some land and build some houses so that girls get a third choice, that they can stay in a community that's familiar with them and develop skills so that they're not vulnerable to exploitation or abusive relationships. So that's, to me, that's just like a clear example of like giving girls choices so they don't end up on the streets being exploited for sexual labor.
So what is Zoe doing? You gave us a high level of all the things you guys are doing. There's quite a bit, and I know that you probably don't have time to unpack everything. But what is Zoe doing specifically to combat modern day slavery?
The one project that we have that is very specific to modern day slavery is partnering with one of our workers in Indonesia. And this is for after people have been rescued. And so they've been enslaved, they've been rescued, they've had some time in a safe house. And then the question is, now what? So the sexy part of the rescue's already happened, right? That's what gets all the headlines. And but then there's a really long process of then taking that person who was enmeshed with being a human trafficking survivor and what their life is going to look like going forward. And so our partner is setting up a training center for vocational skills and life skills, and then creating a network of reliable and reputable employers so that they can create people who know how to work, and then they'll link them up with people who won't exploit them, so that they then have the reduced risk of being re-trafficked. And so the goal is to reduce their vulnerabilities, and so that they have choices, safe choices, and they have increased ability to provide for themselves. So that, to me, that's the biggest thing you need to get people who have been enslaved is you give them their choices back, because I don't think most of us realize what it's like to be faced with no choices.
Someone might be getting spurred right now as you're talking about the projects, as you're talking about modern day slavery and what Zoe is doing. What is one of the best ways for someone to get involved to combat modern day slavery? Are there any tips? Are there any resources that you have that you would suggest?
Well, yeah, I mean, like it's a huge area, right? Like I mentioned, there's prevention, there's rescue, there's rehabilitation, and each of those areas require specific skill sets. And so, if you want to look at reducing people's vulnerabilities to being pulled into human trafficking and being a modern day slave, you need to look into like international community development, because the areas that feed into that are like poverty, lack of education, leadership development for women in the community, so that they know their worth as human beings, and so that they know that they're worth more than what is being done to them. And to me, that also encompasses church planting, that churches are lighthouses in those communities that actually show the dignity and value of worth, that both men and women are created in the image of God and have equal value. So just being able to educate a community up that their girls are worth just as much as their boys. Because you see some places where they'll sell the girl so that they have money to put the boy through school and things like that, right? So that happens in communities around the world. If you want to get involved, you're looking at, can you be an educator? Can you do international community development projects? And then you're going to have to do a ton of research on what specific area, because every area has, region has different issues, right? And then I mean, the rescue part, like I said, this is the part everyone, it's a big sexy thing, and they want to be able to rush in and rescue people. That'd be the hardest part to get involved in, because you really need to get involved with law enforcement. So you're looking at organizations like the International Justice Mission. They have like lawyers that work alongside local law enforcement. So they do a lot of capacity building within local law enforcement and help walk survivors through the judicial system in the communities that they're in. Yeah, and then the rehab, the rescue and rehab portion, you need trauma counselors, business people, setting up businesses that people could work at, so it's very multifaceted. If someone's like, I really want to get involved with helping with the issue of modern day slavery, because it's a huge problem. We have more slaves today in the world than at any point in history. You need to say, okay, how has God specifically given me gifts and strengths and passions, and how do I line those up? So if I'm the type of person where I just like really pastoral and I like walking people through suffering, then maybe you should look at the trauma counseling portion. Or if you've got like a real passion for justice in terms of how it looks legal wise, you're going to need to go be a lawyer or get yourself educated. If you want to work with local churches, then you do need some education so that you can then train local people on how to build capacity for themselves in those situations.
Sara, thank you so much. I know that was pretty high level. You brought it down and you gave some excellent pointers and tips. If anyone is interested in knowing more about this, Sara, could they reach out to you? Is there a way that they could reach out to you?
For sure. Yeah. And even if it's not like a Zoe project per se, I do have, connections around the world that people work in these different areas that you could also talk to. So if someone reaches out to me, I can make sure I get you connected with someone who works in that specific area.
So we'll link some of that information down below. Sara, thank you so much for sharing about modern day slavery and just giving us that overview. That was really in-depth and moving at the same time. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Sara or to myself. And until next time, we will see you.